So you can just remember these tiny little patterns, and you can see them all over the fretboard. But just those few little things, once you start looking at your fretboard, it's going to open it all up for you. You'll understand where you are, and you can build out these little triads, and you can build yourself a little triad anywhere, and it's going to become the cage system. Let's take a little bit closer look as to how we can build out a skeleton around those root notes and really start to understand the fretboard. So what we've got here is a fretboard escalator with just the root notes located as per your previous lessons. If you don't know how to do that, then I'll put a link above, and it's super easy. You'll be able to figure it out. So what we have are the A notes across the entire fretboard. Now, we don't know if these are major or minor scales. We're going to fill in yet. All we know is that's where the A's are on the fretboard. So why don't we try and fill in, that is what we call a root. Let's try and fill in the root, the third, and the fifth, and see how things start to shape up as we add in the chord tones across the fretboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the color blue for the third and yellow for the fifth. So we know from our previous videos, I'll try and post a link above, how to find the third. Now there's two ways to go about it. I have a second fretboard escalator here with the full major scale laid out on it with the scale interval numbers shown. So finding the third from this root, of course our root is the 1, as we know from previous lessons. Finding the third is easy, I just have to look for the 3. So I could use this as a crutch or to check my work, but we could also do it in our head really quite easily, because as we know before, the guitar is tuned in fourths, so we can count to 4. We can say if this is our root as 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 is going to be right below it. And next to the 4, because of our half-step list, right? Remember the half-step list. Half-step list. We've got 3 and 4 and 7 and 1. They're always together. They're always a half step apart. So we're going to pretend this isn't there, but we're going to use it to check our work as we go. So here's our root note. That's our 1. We know underneath is a 4. So a half step to the left is a 3. So 1 string down and 1 fret to the left from any root note is going to be our 3 of the chord. So a chord's made up of the first, the third, and the fifth interval of the scale, right? The 1, the 3, and the 5. That's all you got to know, and you can make a chord. So let's do that. Let's find all our root notes. That's our E string root note. We've got, let's do the easy ones because this one comes off the end, right? So it's going to be a bit wonky to look at. So we're going to go 1 string down and 1 half step to the left, right? But the problem with this one, as we recall, is we're crossing from the G string to the B string. So whenever we do that, we've got to go up 1 half step, just like that. Okay, so the next one along here, we know that we can go 1 string down and 1 half step or 1 fret to the left. That's our third. Now we didn't cross from the G to the B, so we don't have to worry about that shift, okay? So let's find another root note to do this too. So 1 string down, that's going to be our 4, and 1 half step to the left is our 3, right? Now again, we didn't cross from G to B, so we're good. We're keeping that third just where it is. We don't have to shift it up. Let's see, we got another one here. We've got this root note. 1 string down, we're going to get us to our 4, half step to the left, that's our 3. So do we have them all done yet? I don't think so. We should have 6 of them. So let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So who are we missing here? Well, we're missing the one that's a little bit weird, right? So this one here, we can do it 2 ways. We know that the E strings are always going to be equal. So if our root is here, then our root is here. So if root is the same on the high E string as it is on the low E string, our third is going to be the same here and here. So I think for now we'll just call that we're going to do it the cheating way or the easier way. But for now, we've got 6 thirds located on our fretboard, right? We've got the root and we've got the third. But now what about the fifth? So to find the fifth, we've got 2 ways of going about that. We can either count up from the third. So we've got a third here, which is a 3. This is a 4. And a whole step over is going to be a 5. Now, of course, the whole step is because the 4 to 5 is not our on our half step list, right? The other way you can do it is you can just drop it down from your root and say, well, that's my 4, so a whole step over is going to be a 5. Okay, so let's count over. So this is our 3rd, right? So this is our 4th, and because of our half step list, it's only 3 to 4, and then 4 to 5 is a whole step. Now you'll notice as well, the other way to do it is to say my root, everywhere above my root is going to be my 5, right? So I could do that in a whole bunch of scenarios here. So instead of counting around, here's my root. I know that above my root is going to be my 5. Now, we didn't cross from the G to B, so we don't have to worry about that shift, all right? Now, let's do another one. So let's do above my root, and that is going to be my 5. But wait, we have that weird shift going on, right? We know that this string is always shifted 1 half step to the right. So that means we got to go to the left here to compensate. Okay, so let's go. We've got another root here. We can go 1 string above. If that's our 1, then our 5 is here. Now we can take a look at the major scale and the major scale intervals and check some of our work here. We've got a 5, we've got a 1, and a 3. Okay, that's pretty good. So things are coming together. Do we have all of our 5s in here? No, we don't. So we can see that we're missing one on the high E string. So we've got 2 methods. If that's a 3, we can see 3, 4, and then 5. Or high E string equals low E string. So do we have 6 yellow dots on here? Do we have 6/5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got them all. Perfect. So this is filled out with all of the places you can play a triad or the A major chord. All right, I had to check my audio. I had my echo turned on, so hopefully this sounds a bit better. So we've got the fretboard escalator filled out with all of the roots, thirds, and fifths to create A chords all across the fretboard. So anywhere you see a red, yellow, and blue is going to be an A chord. So we start to recognize cage patterns. If I start to cover things up here, and I'm just going to start here over at the C because everybody likes to think about caged as in C-A-G-E-D, but here is our C pattern. Now you recognize that you would bar your finger here and then you would see that this is just a standard C shape you would play in an open position. So there's your C shape, here's your A shape, there's your G shape, here's your E shape, and there's your D shape. So you don't have to play the entire shape like a big giant bar chord, especially for G, but certainly your E shape you can play as a full bar chord. The D shape, you might want to just play these 3 together. You might want to bring in that root note, it's pretty easy, but maybe not bringing this guy in. And then the C shape, after some practice you can get it, but it's a little bit painful. So just pick the 3. So if you played these 3, it'd be a pretty low sounding shape or low sounding A chord in the C shape. So maybe you want to stick with this D shape, or maybe you want to combine it because this repeats with this root, this third, and that fifth. Coming over to this side, that's a pretty easy standard open A shape to play. You can handle that. G shape, again, extremely difficult. For me, I hate it. And then move on and you've got your back to your E shape. Excuse me. Okay, next task. We're going to fill in the rest of the pentatonic scale pattern around each shape. So we're working with the major scale here. We're working with an A major because our third, we did the root, third, and fifth. Now, if it was minor, we would shift that third down a half step, but we're going to stick with major. So we've got an A major chord shape across the entire fretboard. How do we fill in? We should know, you can remember your patterns from when you memorized this with a fretboard escalator earlier. We've got 5 different patterns. You can name them whatever you want. Some people name them by numbers, but I just memorized this shape by kind of the string that it starts on. So the E string is the E shape. The A string is the A shape. The D string is the D shape. So there's a D string, there's your D shape, right? The G string, if the root's on the G string, it's a G shape. And then, of course, the C Well, we don't have a C string, so the closest thing to your B string is going to be a C. So if the root's on the B string, it's a C shape, right? And then we're back to our E, root's on the E, and we're back to the E shape. Okay, let's fill in the E shape major pentatonic filler notes, I guess we'll call them, right? So we've got one here, and we can actually use this major full note major scale if we want to check as we go, but we shouldn't need to. We should have these memorized. So I'm going to start placing these in, and I'm going to fill in the pattern that I have memorized, because I go to bed sleeping. I go to bed thinking about this every single night. There. So I have filled in the rest of the pattern. Now, if you're going to solo with this, just sticking with this one pattern, hang out on the yellow, hang out on the red, hang out on the blue, see how it sounds, and just use the white ones as passing tones. Okay, then your chord tone targeting. All right, and if you can place these pins in here, you're learning it in your head, and then when you sit down, you can look at this, and it's really just pops right out at you. Instead of using your phone or a book or a PDF or a computer screen, you just set this on your amp, and if it's too much to look at all that at once, you can just look at just this one piece. Move this root note to whatever major chord is being played at the time. So if you've just got an A major drone backing track, just the sound of an A major chord, then this will be your A. And then if you find a G major drone backing track, just use your finger and put it on the G, or slide this down so that you can your brain can process that. Or if you're comfortable with it, just put it all back together and see it all as one. So now what can we do? Well, let's fill out the rest of these scale patterns. So I actually think it's beneficial to remove these white ones and start over with just the colors, because it's another challenge. You'd think it'd be really easy, but it adds just that extra little bit of thought. But for now, I'm just going to fill out the pattern to the left, which is just sort of your base, what I usually call the base pattern. So to the left of that is just a standard bass pattern that you would have memorized from using the fretboard escalator. I just dropped a few extra passing notes in there, and now we have it's a major pentatonic, because the root note's over here. And now if you play this and you're noodling around, start targeting the red, which is the root, the blue, which is the third, and the fifth. Just see how it sounds. Just let it ring out. You don't have to rip a big solo. Just see how it feels to let the third fill out. And then do the fifth. See how that feels. See how it sounds. And if you want to really play around with it, play one fret to the left and to the right of each of those, the root, the third, and the fifth. You're not going to like the way some of it sounds, but you'll realize that actually some of it sounds pretty good. So like, I'm a huge fan of the 7 and then resolving to the 1. But some people may not like that, but I love just the way it sounds. So I'll go play to the left of the root, play to the right of the root, and then resolve back to the root. Play to the left of the 3, which is a flat 3, right? And then play to the right of the 3 and resolve back to the 3. Do the same for the 5th. And just play around, mess around with it. See how it sounds to resolve back to those notes. I would also recommend playing through the scale and saying the root notes as you go by them. After a while, you can become really good at it. It'll only take you a day or two, maybe 3, and you'll be able to say it. And you'll think, man, I didn't think I thought this was so hard when I started, but you can do it. So, okay, we've got 2 patterns. We've got that pattern here, which is our bass. We've got sort of it's very major scale looking pattern here, which I don't want to call the major scale pattern because it exists in the minor as well. So there's your next scale pattern. And then remember, we had that other one that I called the mirrored pattern, because it just to me looks like a mirror. We've got this outlier here, and we've got this root note outlier here. So we should be able to fill in those few missing notes to make a major pentatonic scale. So boom, I only just put 2 notes in there, and all of a sudden it just starts, it appears to you. There's that mirrored shape again, right? Okay, so again, play through that, play it top to bottom if you want, but hang out on the root, the third and the fifth. Play to the left of it, play to the right of it, play around with it, play the full scale. It's just a great way to discover how chord tone targeting works in a very visual way. No screens to distract you. It's what I love about this thing. There's no phones around. Okay, so we've got our mirrored pattern, right? And now there's going to be just a couple more to fill out this last pattern here. Okay, and it's not going to be many again. So let's grab some white pegs, and we're just going to fill this in with the rest of our pattern. Okay, so that's it. We've just completed that last pattern, which is your C shape. So now let's go back. It's a good point. Let's go back over and look at these shapes and see if we can recognize our cage system still. All right, so let's start with the C, because that's just where everybody, we're going to start with C on caged. Can't spell caged any other way. So we've got C, right? We've got A. These are open, right? We've got G. I'm going to cover that up, but minus the root note. You could also play this. You could also play the fifth. I personally play the root and the fifth, so let's call that G. Where am I? We got E, right? Whoops, sorry. We got E here. Check me. Yeah, you can see that. Okay, and then we've got our D pattern, which is there. And we're back to C. So the other thing to remember, caged. Caged is actually, you can base it off E, A, D, G, B, E, which are our strings, except for we don't need to talk about the high E because there's no pattern for that. It's the same as the low E. The B equals a C, right? So caged is really this. It's C, A, G, E, D. But these are our string names. We've got E string, A string, D string, G string, and B, which equals C string. Okay? So E string, E shape. A string, A shape. D string, D shape. G string, G shape, right? B string, C shape. So it's easy to remember. So let's look at it again. E string, we've got our root on our E string. That is our E shape. Whoops, there we go. E string, there's our E shape. But you're going to bar here, so I guess I'm not covering up as much as I should. I just always have to check the camera. Here we go. Okay, root on the E, E shape, right? Root on the A. Our root is on the A here, which is our open string here. There's our A shape. Root on the D string. Find the root on the D string. Here's our D shape. It's hard to cover all the notes so that you can see it, but you get the idea. We've got our root, fifth, root, and third. G string. If we've got a root on the G string, there's our G shape. Did we do that already? Doesn't matter. C string, root on the C string, we've got the C shape. Okay? So I think I might have beaten that dead horse enough. So what can you do? You can now take those notes that you located and have been working so hard finding all across your fretboard, finding all your A's. Now you know why you need to find all the A's. Because from those A's, you build out the third, which is one string down and a half step to the left, and the fifth, which is one string down and a full step to the right, or if you want, you go one string back from the root. So you can just remember these tiny little patterns, and you can see them all over the fretboard. But just those few little things, once you start looking at your fretboard, it's going to open it all up for you. You'll understand where you are, and you can build out these little triads, and you can build yourself a little triad anywhere, and it's going to become the cage system. So then after you've built out these triads, you've got your root notes, you've added your third and your fifth on the fretboard escalator, maybe do that a few times, grab your guitar, and then plunk them away. Just pluck away those root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth. Find a triad, find where you like to play the triad, find if you like the way it sounds at different places in the fretboard. And then when that's done, just take each shape, take your E shape, and fill in the missing notes for your pentatonic scale. Okay, so there's your E shape, there's your full pentatonic scale for it, right? Just add in those couple notes. And then move on to the A shape. Okay, there's your A shape, And then there's adding in the white notes around it to make the full pentatonic scale. And then there's the G shape. So the G shape is really just the colored notes. You don't have to worry about the white ones. And then fill in the rest of the filler notes to make your pentatonic scale. And continue on. All right, good. Hopefully that helps. This is just one step in making a 10-step system for this. And it'll be just a practice routine. And this will be it's a kind of a deep dive for one of the steps. All right, so we will see you next time.